I should have asked more questions before I signed that contract. That's the thing I keep coming back to. Not the sound on the glass or the way the fabric moved, but how easily I walked right into it because I needed the money. My name's Arthur Vance. I'm a 49-year-old HVAC technician from Toledo, Ohio. In the winter of 2022, I'd just come off a brutal stretch. My company had downsized after a corporate merger, my savings were practically gone, and my cousin Mark told me about a winter caretaker position up in the Michigan Northwoods. Off-season property management, a luxury A-frame cabin on 50 acres of dense timber, no neighbors for 4 miles in any direction. The owner was a real estate guy from Chicago who just needed someone to keep the furnace running, check for roof snow load, and make sure the pipes didn't freeze. Cash, $900 a week plus free lodging until April. I said yes before he even finished explaining the terms. The drive up was quiet. Late November, the kind of heavy, iron-gray sky that promises a miserable winter. I had my truck loaded down with tools, a month of dry groceries, and my dog Copper, an 8-year-old golden mix who'd been my shadow through a lot of bad years. I remember pulling off the state highway onto the gravel logging road, thinking this was exactly what I needed to clear my head. Just physical work, silence, and time. I should have paid attention to how Copper acted when we arrived. He wouldn't get out of the truck. I had to physically pull on his collar, which he never makes me do. When his paws finally hit the gravel, he didn't run around the yard or sniff the perimeter like usual. He stayed pressed directly against my left knee, his tail tucked completely flat, staring into the dark crawl space beneath the wraparound wooden deck. I laughed it off, told him he was being an old baby, and unlocked the heavy side door. The cabin itself was beautiful. High vaulted ceilings, massive cedar logs, and a giant wall of floor-to-ceiling windows facing a private Blackwater lake. The owner, Mr. Eltridge, had left a neat blue folder on the kitchen island. Thermostat overrides, the gate code, the number for the local propane delivery, completely normal stuff. But at the very back of the folder, almost like an afterthought, there was a piece of cardboard torn from a shipping box with a handwritten note in thick black Sharpie. It said, "Do not pull the blinds down on the lakeside windows at night. Leave them wide open, all 3 panels." No explanation, no signature, just that. I figured it was a wildlife thing, maybe birds hitting the glass if they saw a reflection, or deer getting spooked by the interior lights. I left the heavy canvas blinds cranked all the way up to the ceiling, turned on the kitchen lights, made dinner, and spent my first night listening to the ice groan out on the lake. Copper slept heavy right against my bedroom door. I slept fine. The first 5 days were completely uneventful. Beautiful, even. I cleared a clogged intake vent on the furnace, chopped some split oak, and drove into the small town of Grand Marais every few days for supplies. I was starting to feel like a normal human being again. Then, on the 6th night, I forgot. I was watching a movie on my tablet around midnight, and the pitch-black void outside those massive glass panels was giving me that weird exposed feeling when you're alone in the woods. Without thinking, I walked over to the manual wall cranks and lowered the heavy canvas blinds on all 3 lakeside windows, blocking out the dark. I went to bed half an hour later. Copper woke me up at 2:15 a.m. It wasn't a bark. It was a low, vibrating growl deep in his chest, the kind of sound a dog makes when they are genuinely terrified. He was standing at the foot of the bed, his head lowered, the hair along his spine standing completely straight. I got up, grabbed my flashlight, and walked out into the main living room. The house was freezing. At first, I didn't see anything, but as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I looked at the tiny 2-inch gap at the very bottom of the canvas blinds where they met the floorboards. There was a truck parked down by the boat launch at the edge of the water, just sitting there. No headlights, no engine noise, no movement. It was just a dark silhouette against the gray snow. It hadn't been there when I let Copper out at 10. It was just there now on a private access road behind a locked iron gate. I watched through the tiny gap for 20 minutes. The truck didn't move. Finally, feeling a surge of nervous anger, I walked over to the wall switches and flipped on the massive exterior floodlights that illuminated the entire shoreline. Then, I cranked the 3 canvas blinds back up to the ceiling. When I looked back out, the truck was gone. I hadn't heard a starter motor, I hadn't seen brake lights, I hadn't heard tires on frozen gravel. It was just gone. I checked the deadbolts on both doors and didn't sleep the rest of the night. I called Mr. Eltridge first thing in the morning. He picked up immediately. When I told him about the vehicle on the private launch, there was a silence on the line that lasted just a beat too long. He didn't ask what color the truck was, he didn't ask if they had broken into the boathouse, he just said, "Did you close the lakeside blinds last night, Arthur?" I told him I had because the reflection was making me paranoid. He sighed, a heavy, tired sound. "Don't do that again. When the blinds are open, they can see inside. They know someone is home, they know you're active, and it discourages unwanted curiosity. If you close them, they get curious about what's behind them." I asked him who they were, if it was local teenagers or poachers tracking deer on his land. He just said, "Just keep the glass clear, Arthur. You're getting paid well. Leave the blinds up." And he hung up. I stood in the kitchen for a long time looking at that piece of cardboard on the counter. Not wildlife and not security, just an instruction with an ominous warning behind it. I should have left that day. I know that now. I stayed because I needed the money, because the sun was out, and because I convinced myself I was overthinking a standard rural trespassing issue. Rational daylight thinking is the biggest lie your brain tells you. The next 2 nights were quiet. Lights on, lines wide open. Copper relaxed a bit. I told myself the truck was a fluke. On the 3rd night, around 11 p.m., I was sitting at the kitchen island reading. The house was dead silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Then I heard it. Someone tapped on the center lakeside window. Not frantically, 3 slow, deliberate raps. Tap, tap, tap. The precise sound of a heavy knuckle hitting thick, double-paned glass. 6 feet off the ground, right where the wooden deck met the center of the great room. Copper didn't even growl this time. He went completely silent, bolted into the bathroom, and crammed himself behind the toilet, shaking. I went completely rigid. I grabbed my flashlight, forced my legs to move, and walked slowly into the hallway facing the glass wall. I scanned the illuminated deck through the windows. I didn't see anyone standing out there, but I couldn't see the lake either, because the center canvas blind was down. I knew for an absolute, undeniable fact I hadn't touched the wall cranks. I had checked them before dark. I always checked them. Someone had reached the external mechanism on the deck, bypassed the system, and manually rolled the heavy canvas blind down to the floorboards from the outside. I didn't open the door. I didn't turn on the floodlights. I grabbed my truck keys, ran into the bathroom, dragged Copper out by his collar, and went straight through the side mudroom door to my vehicle. I didn't pack my clothes. I didn't turn off the furnace. I didn't lock up. I just threw the truck into reverse, smashed through the snowbanks, and tore down that logging road at 50 miles an hour until I hit the state highway. I never went back. I left a voicemail for Elridge, telling him where to find his keys in the driveway, and he never called me back. I didn't get the rest of my money, and I didn't care. I still don't sleep well. I think about those 3 slow taps every time the sun goes down. But the thing that bothers me the most, the detail I still can't build a rational explanation around, is what I saw right before I threw the truck into drive. As my headlights swept across the front wraparound deck, I looked at the external crank housing for the blinds.
Mr. Elridge kept the outside manual overrides inside a steel utility box so guests couldn't mess with them from the deck. The heavy brass padlock was still perfectly intact, rusted shut, and completely unbroken, which means whoever rolled that center blind down didn't use the mechanism at all. They had manually grabbed the bottom of the heavy canvas fabric from the gap beneath the deck floorboards and pulled it down by raw, crushing force. And based on the way the fabric was still taut and vibrating against the glass when I started my engine, they were still holding on to it when I drove away.
The thing about spending 20 years tracking apex predators in the backcountry is that you stop being afraid of the woods. You've been in the dark too many times, tracked too many mountain lions, and spent too many nights listening to the brush move to let it mean anything. That's what I told myself anyway, until the weekend I spent at the Deadwood Creek Survey Station in northwestern Wyoming, and I realized there are some things in the wilderness that nature isn't responsible for. My name is David Ross. I'm 51 years old, a retired field biologist for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, and a former winter tracking volunteer. This happened in early March of 2021, the kind of March that Wyoming specializes in, where the mountain passes look like winter finally broke right before a sudden pressure drop brings a blizzard that buries you under 3 feet of powder. I was up at a state research cabin near the Absaroka Range, a basic utility cabin used by field researchers doing winter wildlife surveys. I'd been assigned a solo 4-day project: pull the data drives from 3 automated acoustic monitors, check the solar battery banks, and recalibrate a remote telemetry repeater that had been sending back corrupted, garbled data to the main station in Cody. I'd done this exact solo run a dozen times. I had my satellite phone, my radio, my cold weather pack, and my sidearm. The cabin was standard issue: a small wood stove, a propane burner, a single cot, and a heavy lockbox with emergency rations. The first 2 data drives were clean. It took me a 5-hour hike through thigh-high powder to retrieve them on Friday morning. Friday evening, I was heating up a can of chili on the propane burner when my VHF radio transceiver crackled to life. It wasn't a voice, it was a rhythmic pattern of static. Click, click, pause. Click, click, pause. It repeated with perfect mechanical precision. I assumed it was simple atmospheric interference from the incoming weather front. I adjusted the squelch dial and the sound faded out. I ate, read a field manual by flashlight, and went to sleep around 10 p.m. At 11:15 a.m., the radio woke me up again. The same pattern was blasting through the speaker, but it was significantly louder now, cleaner. It didn't sound like atmospheric bleed anymore. It sounded like someone was physically keying a hand mic rhythmically, deliberately. I sat up on the edge of my cot and listened. The pattern ran for exactly 40 seconds, stopped for 2 minutes, and then started right back up. I've been in the backcountry long enough to know that rhythmic radio transmission usually means a distress signal, but this wasn't SOS. This was 2 sharp pulses, repeating on a highly secure, restricted state frequency that wasn't supposed to have any civilian traffic. I picked up the hand mic, keyed it, and identified myself. Deadwood Station, this is Ross. I am receiving traffic on this channel. Please identify your unit. No response. The pattern continued for another 10 seconds, and then it cut off completely. I radioed the night dispatcher back at the Cody station, a guy named Marcus I'd known for 10 years. I told him what I'd heard. Marcus checked the tracking logs and told me there were no other active field personnel in my sector and no scheduled maintenance on that frequency. He told me it was likely just an automated weather sensor down the ridge, told me to log it and get some sleep. I logged it, but I didn't sleep. I want to be precise about what bothered me, because it wasn't the transmission itself. It was the fact that the static stopped the exact millisecond I keyed my own radio to respond. Atmospheric interference doesn't do that. A broken weather sensor doesn't care if you talk back to it. You transmit over a malfunctioning machine, and the noise just keeps grinding over your voice. This stopped, like it was listening. Saturday morning was blindingly cold. I headed out for the third acoustic monitor at first light, moving through 18 inches of fresh, hard-packed snow. It was a beautiful, severe landscape, the kind of total silence you only get in high-altitude timber. No wind, no birds, just the crunch of my snowshoes. I found the monitor box bolted to a lodgepole pine, swapped the data drive, and sat down on a granite ledge to eat a protein bar. That's when I saw the tracks. They were coming straight up the drainage basin, perfectly paralleling my own route from the cabin. But whoever made them had stayed strictly inside the tree cover, about 100 yards to my east. They were fresh. They crossed over a wind-drifted ridge where the snow hasn't even begun to settle yet, meaning they'd been made within the last 2 hours. Someone had been tracking me from the trees, matching my pace, staying just out of my direct line of sight. I'm going to tell you exactly what went through my mind, because I want to be honest about the denial. My first thought was a backcountry hiker or a poacher. It's public land, people are allowed to be out there. But my second thought was that they stayed in the deepest shadows of the pines the entire time. And my third thought was that there was absolutely no trailhead in that direction. The nearest access point from that side of the ridge was a 12-mile trek through unmaintained, lethal terrain. I followed the tracks backward for about a quarter mile until they hit a rocky, wind-scoured ridge where the snow was completely blown clear. I hiked back to the cabin significantly faster than I needed to. When I got back, I did something I had never done in my entire career at a state utility cabin. I did a full perimeter check. Everything looked untouched. There were no tracks in the snow directly around the porch. I went inside, stoked the wood stove, and radioed Marcus to update my status. I mentioned the parallel tracks. Marcus insisted it was probably a solo winter hiker avoiding the main trails. Logically, he was right. People do strange things in the backcountry. But that night, a few minutes after midnight, I heard the sound. It wasn't a loud noise. It was a soft, rhythmic crunching in the snow outside. Not right at the door, but somewhere along the tree line to the north, maybe 40 yards out. The kind of sound that reaches you just at the absolute edge of human perception, where you aren't entirely sure your brain isn't playing tricks on you. I lay perfectly still on the cot, my hand gripping my sidearm. Snow settling, maybe. A foraging elk. Then I heard the breathing, or what I thought was breathing. A slow, heavy, rhythmic intake of air that was slightly too regular for the wind whistling through the cabin seams. It was coming from the exact same direction as the footsteps. My hand found the radio on autopilot. Before I had even made a conscious decision, I lifted the hand mic and pressed the talk button down to call base. The breathing outside stopped instantly, the exact millisecond the mic clicked. The same way the radio signal had cut out the night before. I lay there on that cot for 4 hours, with my flashlight in one hand and my gun in the other. I didn't hear the sound again. I broke camp at dawn, a full 6 hours before my scheduled checkout time. I radioed the station and told them I was heading down early, citing the incoming blizzard, which was partially true. I've thought about that weekend for 5 years. I've run every rational explanation through my head. A lost hunter who made camp in the timber. Acoustic distortion from the valley floor. Sound traveling strangely in freezing air, which it often does. But here's what I can't explain away. When I finally drove down the mountain and pulled into the regional office in Cody, I went to clear my gear out of the truck. I happened to look down at the VHF radio unit I had carried in my pack. Really look at it. The frequency dial had been changed.
It wasn't on the secure state channel I'd been using to talk to Marcus. It wasn't on the emergency distress frequency either. It had been mechanically turned to a completely dead, unassigned frequency. The exact channel where all that rhythmic static had been transmitting. I hadn't touched that dial. I was certain of it. I had kept the radio locked in the side pocket of my technical pack the entire hike down. And if I hadn't touched it, if whoever was walking in the trees outside that cabin had come close enough to change a physical dial on my gear while I was staring out the window, then the real question isn't what they were trying to broadcast. It's why they needed me to stay on that channel.
I want to say up front that I am not a person who panics. I'm a 44-year-old logistics manager from Columbus, Ohio. I coach my son's youth baseball team, I drive a Subaru, and I am by every metric a calm and completely unremarkable person. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that what I'm about to describe didn't come from anxiety, sleep deprivation, or an overactive imagination. It came from paying attention. This was July of 2022. My wife Rachel and I had rented a lake cabin in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan for a family vacation. Just me, Rachel, and our 2 kids, Caleb, who was 9, and Lily, who was 6. We'd done cabin trips before, always through major rental platforms, and they were always fine. This one was a little more remote than usual, about 40 minutes north of Munising on a private dirt road off the main highway. There was absolutely no cell service past the last mile and a half of gravel, but the rental listing had glowing reviews. A family from the Chicago suburbs had left a 5-star review just 2 weeks before we booked it. We drove up on a Sunday, arriving around 6 p.m. The kids were exhausted from the road, and Rachel was navigating entirely off downloaded offline maps because our phones were useless. The cabin was exactly what it looked like in the photos. 2 stories, a big wooden deck, and private lake access down a short trail through the birch trees. It was beautiful. The key was in a lockbox by the front door, the code from the host worked perfectly, and everything felt completely normal. We unloaded the truck, the kids ran straight for the dock, and I fired up the grill. It was one of those perfect summer evenings where the whole point of a vacation actually makes sense. I found the first thing around 8 p.m. when I was checking the cabin for basic supplies. In the second upstairs bedroom, the one we'd put the kids in, there was a travel bag shoved deep under the bed frame. It wasn't ours. It was a navy blue duffel bag, medium-sized with a black shoulder strap. I pulled it out and zipped it open. Inside were men's clothes, medium-sized, rolled up neatly. 3 changes of clothes, a basic toiletries bag, a phone charger, and a paperback thriller novel. No wallet, no ID, no cell phone. I brought it downstairs and showed Rachel. She messaged the host immediately through the rental platform app, writing, "We found a bag that appears to belong to a previous guest under the bed. Can you advise?" The host responded within 10 minutes. He said the previous guests had actually messaged him about a missing bag, and they'd likely left it behind and would be driving back up to retrieve it sometime during the week. He apologized, said he should have mentioned it, and told us he'd let them know we had it. We put the duffel bag right by the front door. It was logical, easy. A guest left a bag, they'd be back for it, done. I put it completely out of my mind. The next day was perfect. We went kayaking, took a short hike to a local waterfall, and grilled hamburgers. Lily collected 23 pine cones from the woods and named every single one of them. Rachel and I sat on the deck after the kids went to bed and watched the lake go completely dark. The navy blue duffel bag was still sitting right by the front door when we went to sleep. When I came downstairs at 6:30 the next morning, the bag was gone. I stood in the entryway staring at the empty space. The front door was locked. The back door was locked. All the windows I checked were latched from the inside. There was no note on the counter,
no message from the host on Rachel's phone, and absolutely no indication that anyone had been there. The bag was simply gone. I want to be honest with you about my thought process in that moment. I told Rachel immediately, and we both agreed that someone must have come by while we were sound asleep. We reasoned that they had a spare key or had unlocked the lockbox, and that it was technically fine. It was their bag after all, and the host had already warned us they'd be coming. It's the classic rationalization that smart people do when something deeply unsettling happens. There is always a reasonable explanation, and I am a calm and completely unremarkable person. But then Rachel looked at me and asked, "Did they go upstairs?" I hadn't thought about that. The bag had been upstairs when we found it, directly under the bed in the exact room where my 9-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter were currently sleeping. Neither of us said anything for a long time. I walked upstairs and checked the kids' room. They were both still fast asleep. Nothing looked disturbed. Lily's pinecone collection was still arranged perfectly on the windowsill. Caleb's baseball mitt was still on the chair. Everything was fine. I messaged the host again and asked him to confirm what time his previous guests had retrieved their property. He responded a few minutes later, saying he hadn't heard from them yet and didn't even know it had been picked up. I read that message 3 times.
Rachel wanted to leave right then, but I talked her out of it, which is the single thing I have the hardest time living with now. I told her we were overreacting, that obviously someone with a key had come and gotten their property, and the host just didn't have his notifications on. I told her I'd call the local property management company listed on the fridge magnet to get everything sorted out. I walked out to my car to get a clear signal and called the management company. An actual person answered, not an automated platform. The woman pulled up our reservation and confirmed exactly what the host had said. The previous guests had reported a missing bag. Then I asked her when they were scheduled to come get it. She said their authorized access wasn't scheduled until the following Friday. We were on Tuesday. I sat in the front seat of my Subaru with the phone in my hand, running through the timeline in my head. The previous guests had a bag. The host said they'd come at some point. The management company said their scheduled access wasn't for 3 more days. Yet the bag was gone on Tuesday morning. Someone had been inside the cabin in the dead of night, using a key that wasn't authorized by the management company while my family slept. When I walked back up the gravel driveway toward the cabin, I noticed something I had completely missed in the morning light. Tire tracks. In the soft gravel right next to where I had parked my car, there were heavy tread marks from another vehicle. A second car, from the width of the tread, likely a large USV. And about 10 feet from where my vehicle was parked, sitting just off the edge of the gravel in the tall grass, was a child's car seat. The small kind, built for a toddler. It was just sitting there in the grass. No car, no person, no context. It hadn't been there the night before. I was certain of it. I had walked right past that exact patch of grass at 11 p.m. to check the latch on the bear-proof trash cans. Rachel saw my face the moment I walked back through the front door. We left within the hour. We packed the kids' things frantically, but tried to act like we were just going on a casual day trip, keeping our voices calm and steady. Caleb was frustrated about the fish he hadn't caught yet, and Lily cried about leaving her pine cones behind. I just kept my eyes on the driveway and drove. I called the management company from a gas station 14 miles down the state highway and told them we had checked out early. I told them exactly what I'd found in the driveway. The woman I spoke to was sympathetic, took down a formal report, and said she'd look into it immediately. I've called back twice since that summer. The first time, she told me the previous guests claimed they hadn't been anywhere near the property that week. The second time I called,
No one answered the phone at all. The car seat is the thing I still can't build a rational explanation around. Who leaves a toddler's car seat in an empty field? Why would you come in the middle of the night to retrieve a duffel bag and leave a car seat behind in the grass? Who else had a key to that cabin? And more than any of that, the question that follows me into every room I walk into is the way the car seat was positioned. It wasn't tossed aside, and it hadn't fallen over. It was sitting perfectly upright, facing the cabin, placed exactly where you would put something if you wanted a completely unobstructed, clear view of the front door. I have 2 kids. I think about that camera angle constantly. I still don't know who was at that cabin. I don't know why they came in the dark, and I don't know whose child that seat belonged to. But I do know we never went back. If you made it through all 3 of these stories, you already know you're not sleeping tonight. Hit that subscribe button if you want more true stories that the people who lived them wish they could completely forget. Tell me in the comments below, what do you think they were watching?